Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Bush TR130, a classic radio of the 1960s. We're also going to have a little look at the design of this radio, Mr. Tom Carron. Now he worked for Ogle Design and he designed many things. Another famous thing he designed was the Bond mini car, the little bright orange three-wheeler car. And he also designed a real icon, one of my youth, I'm sure many other people, the Raleigh Chopper. Now this bike in front of you is a replica, or Raleigh released this bike in 2023 and they made a very good copy of the original bike. It's based on the Mark II but it's known as a Mark IV. But let's do the Raleigh bike, because today we're going to focus on this iconic radio. So we're going to be having a look at the radios in my collection, taking us on a little timeline history of the Bush TR130, which came out in 1965, and we'll see where this video takes us as we look at the radios in my collection. So sit back and enjoy as we take a look at the first radio that came out in 1965. So the first radio that we're going to take a look at is the very first Bush TR130, which was released to the British public in 1965, predominantly aimed at the teenager market. And the reason being is that the teenagers used to listen to Radio Luxembourg, and this radio had a preset button for the frequency of 208 Radio Luxembourg, and the teenager can tune straight into it. It also has medium wave and long wave, a volume control and tone control, and then the tuning knob on the right hand side. Now the tuning scale on this is a little different from the 1966 model, which is more commonly known, and this radio is quite rare really. But we'll turn it on and have a listen. I'm currently on long wave.
So I took a course called The Intellectual History of Europe, taught by a very, very respected historian. In the first class, he said, on the last class, I'm going to talk about women's contributions to Western civilization. The last class, he strode in and he said, women's contributions to Western civilization, they made none. That was the prevailing.
It's got quite nice styling features to it, with a chrome metal top.
That's outrageous, isn't it? I mean, but
now we think it's outrageous.
And the case actually splits down the side.
Well, I mean,
did you challenge it? Did you say?
Oh, you mean did I wave my arm?
Yeah.
No, I
Say,
didn't
come
know.
on.
I didn't know enough then to
Right.
challenge it. I mean, now I just stand up and shriek at him. But I mean, the next years between then and when I decided to make a radical change.
Unfortunately, on medium wave we're getting a lot of interference.
Long ago, wasn't it? So here he is introducing Sakia.
Yeah, I mean, his presence here today is interesting. I think it underlines Labour's message about wealth creation. They've got a prominent figure from the business.
These radios
talking about what
are
Labour
1
would
watt
do to make
output.
it easier to create a
Power
successful business in the
and the
UK,
sound
very
is
much
very
hammering
good,
home
good bass.
that wealth creation message that is at the heart of the manifesto.
Unfortunately,
Paul, what could
they're only medium wave and long wave.
you in this? Does
But
politics
they're a good
allow
radio.
for that to please somebody like you in the ahead of a general election?
Well, I think there is some spelling out of how they.
So the next radio is this radio from 1966, and as the radio became more mainstream, a few little changes were made. One of them being that the preset 208 button for Radio Luxembourg was changed to a band spread for finer tuning, and the other one was Radio Caroline featured on the dial, the well-known pirate station, and the Bush logo appeared on the left there. I don't think the BBC was very happy with Bush making radios with Radio Caroline on the markings, and it was soon dropped. So again, it's another feature to look out for if you're interested in picking one of these up. Is the fact it had Radio Caroline on it. Also, you could pick these radios up in black. Now they did make other colours, one being red, and I believe there's a green one out there and supposed to be out there, but I've never seen one. But again, on this one you can see the Radio Caroline markings. This is in a lot better condition than my beige coloured radio. And before we move on, I'd just like to point out that the bottom of the radio, which is released by twisting these two legs, where we can see inside and where the battery's fitted. But it's the very first radio, the base was tan coloured, where the later radio, which I have here, the base is black. It's just another feature to look out for on the first set that was released in 1965. So we'll power up the black version of the TR130, which would date to around 1966 again. It's got the Radio Caroline on the tuning scale, the band spread button, medium wave and long wave. This one's in quite nice condition.
I mean, the Green Party yesterday were proposing the most astonishingly big increases in tax and spending, which in a sense is the sort of tax increases they were talking about, a £90 billion carbon tax.
With the war, because it cuts emotions and sometimes
spontaneity.
Yeah, correct, absolutely. But I'm talking as a referee. This tool.
Tend to get a lot of people on the radio speaking on the phones and find that a good idea of sound quality.
But it also makes...
There's not much more on the medium wave band I can pick up in my location. Long wave.
And I had moved very far away from those impulses. So I thought if I taught young women how to be professional artists without having to choose between their gender and their art, but being able to be themselves in their work, maybe I could find my way back.
There is a whole history of thought that helps us stop being ignorant, and we have to take responsibility to understand and change ourselves and prepare ourselves for a real task. That is one of the reasons women are not able to translate their aspirations into reality, because they are embedded in remaining ignorant. And it pisses me off.
Do you feel that those young women, those students,
Sorry for the language.
with a real appetite
Oh my
to learn
God.
in that way?
It was like I lifted a lid. Then, because of the success of that program, I was invited to bring it to CalArts, the new, at that time...
So as I previously mentioned, these radios were designed by the Ogle Design Studios, and the Bush TR130 was designed by a well-known designer, Tom Curran, who designed the Raleigh Chopper, the Bond Minibug, Reliance Scimitar, and many, many other things. But he clearly had an eye for design. The Ogle Design Studios originally was run by David Ogle, who sadly got killed in a car accident in 1962. But he designed another classic Bush radio, which I'll show you now. So this is another design that came out of the Ogle Design Studios, and originally it was known as the Bush MB60, and then later the Bush TR82. But the version you see in front of you here is the VHF model FM, and it's the VTR130. And as you can see again, it's classic design, quite common because Bush, or I should say the Bush brand, I think was owned by Argos, eventually released a copy of this model. So, and there's still many of these radios that survive. If you just look on eBay, they'll always come up, and they're not very dear. But most of them being long wave and medium wave, they've not really much use as a radio because there's not many stations on those bands now. But this one being a VHF set does pick up FM radio. So back to the Bush TR130. This is quite a rare radio, being that it's in red, because most of them were in beige and then black. And as I said, they did a green version and a red version. But the red is quite a rare radio. As you notice now, the BBC markings have appeared on the tuning scale. Still have their band spread, medium wave and long wave. So we'll turn this radio on and see what we think.
Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
Get match ready with club card prices. Like now £2.
Just in case we get copyright hit on that station.
The service of working people.
As we're recording this, the UK is building up
the
to
most important step,
an election.
changing Britain, rebuilding our
So the
country,
airways are covered in
so that it too serves the interests of
election
working
news,
people.
and
And what a place to launch our plan to do so. The
it's quite
home
nice to be
of the
listening to
cooperative
modern day news on a radio from the 1960s. So what do you think? Long wave, we've only got BBC Radio 4 now.
And 3 women,
I used to be able to pick up
psychological women, Reason, Justice, and Virtue, appeared before
Air Radio
her
Island.
and said, Christine, don't be ridiculous. Of course women are not inferior. And she's like, well, what can I do about it? And they said, you can construct a city of ladies, which she did. She put together the biographies of 500 important women in history, many of whom we had to re-research for the dinner party.
Well, Christine de Pizan is...
Okay, we're now going to move up the time scale, and we're going to go to the rarest radio in my collection in this TR130 series. They did make another radio, a TR230, I think that was around 1970, which I haven't got in my collection. But from what I've heard, the internals of the radio were not as good quality as the earlier sets, although they look very similar. So we'll now move on to my next radio, which is the pride of my collection in this series. Okay, this is it. It's not quite as rare as hen's teeth, but it is rare. So this was the last Bush radio in this range, the TR130, but this radio was known as the VTR330, as we'll see on the back. There, out of the way. Now this radio was made in 1974, and it was only made for a matter of months, just a few months I believe, and it was made in the Bush radio factory in Skegness. So it was designed in 1973, released in early 1974. I think by the end of the spring the factory closed and the radio came to an abrupt end, which is a great shame because it is a fantastic radio, because it was upgraded having long wave, medium wave and VHF. And being very portable with that classic design, they'd now put on an aluminium handle instead of the leather type strap, which made it more robust. I think this is a real classic. With the chrome, looks great in black. The little flash of green on the tuning scale for VHF. So we'll turn it on and have a listen. The one thing here is the volume now is on the extreme left. The tone control is by the tuning scale. Bring the aerial up. Trying to move that station. Okay, that's the aerial up. So that's the aerial up. So I'm going to have to flick through these stations quite quick because we don't want any music.
Bolton Central Library, the big one. Big library in Bolton. I've asked her, what's the latest that anyone's ever returned a book? So she's having a look. She's having a look in the system to find out. Right, it's Tracks of My Years, and this is a joy. It's Chris and Neil from Pet Shop Boys.
Unfortunately, I'm not finding any speaking stations.
Cant o gewni groesawu a ni sy'n ato ni chos hi sy'n cyflwyno fach i feddwl ar bore cothi ar fore iau. Felly bore da iawn I ti, Annie. Bore da. Yn ddiweddar, nes I grio fel babi yn gwylio drama deledu ar fy mhen fy hun. Rwan, ta dwi ddim eisiau rhoi unrhyw spoilers, ond I rhai ohonoch sydd wedi gwylio Lost Boys and Fairies ar BBC, fyddwch chi'n dallt. Nes I ddychryn fy hun braidd, mod I wedi crio gymaint. Felly dyma ddechrau hewl meddylia a styried pryd y ddiweddar nes I grio. Nes I grio am fy mod I wedi blino ac wedi gwylltio'n anheg efo'r plant.
I think that demonstrates the quality of the sound that this radio produces. But, we'll now switch to medium wave and long wave and get away from the music. Hopefully.
Work. 10 games, I think it shouldn't be coming in more than 2-3 times for the whole 10 games. Now we've got games now where it comes in 5 or 6 times a game. Now you may as well let the guys both. Oh look, Amy's got the last.
Again, the weather's not too good here, so we're not picking up much. We'll just try long wave.
Sacagawea and Sojourner of Truth are dozens of women of color. But it's also important to understand what research was like in the early 1970s. Do you know what my research team had to do in order to find information about women?
No, it must have been incredibly difficult because you didn't have the internet then. But if you were making it again today...
I would make it differently. There's no question I would make it differently. Of course I would make it differently because the world is different. The world is global. We understand the importance of diversity. There's way more information available. But it really aggravates me that people do not recognize the challenges.
As you can see, whereas it's
Carolyn Herschel.
VHF transistor
Carolyn
identity
Herschel
with pride
was
on
the
the
sister
front.
of William Herschel, the astronomer.
Bush.
In order to get any profile of Carolyn Herschel, we had to look at 12 books about William.
So look at the back.
And there would be one line. I mean, one line at a time, handwritten on a card, that together, we did that for 3,000 women in order to find enough information about enough women to represent.
Okay, so we're going to look at another radio now, the last radio in this series, and it's a little bit of an imposter, but I'll explain that when I bring the radio to show you. Okay, this is it. Now this radio isn't an original Bush radio, it's a replica. But I have to admit, it's very, very close. And I think they did an excellent job in reproducing this radio. It's not totally accurate, but they brought back Radio Carolina on the tuning scale, the Bush logo. And we have FM where the band spread button, or the 208 Luxembourg button on the original 1965 set, medium wave and long wave, tone control and volume. On the back lets us know it's a modern radio because it says warnings, danger, caution, as it brings us into the modern era. It is a mains radio as well as a battery radio, so that's another advantage. And this radio is powered with a PP9 battery, but they're not very available now, so this one's been converted to 6 AA batteries. That's the little handle. It's a plastic case and it has got a covering on it, which is quite good. all the chrome features, and as it says on the box, a design classic. So I'll just bring in the original 1965 radio so we can compare. Okay, so this is the first radio, released in 1965. Where you can see the 208 preset button, which will take you straight to Radio Luxembourg in its day. And this is the replica. I think you can agree they did an excellent job on the reproduction. So we'll switch this radio on and turn away from the music first. We're on FM, so we might come across a few musical stations.
How are you feeling about everything? So that's the question on the electoral. Have you made up your mind? If so, what was the clincher for you? Also,
that's a tone control.
To this, we're going to be speaking to Rhys Thomas, who's from Larne.
And turn up the volume.
Watch the Larnies. He's reading the news. Today, is there something between Larne and San Stefan?
No, it's just when we were kids in Carmarthen, right? We'd always go like this, are you going out tonight? And they'd go like this, somebody would go, no, the Larnies are out. So you'd avoid it like the plague.
Did the same in Aberystwyth growing up when the Tregaron boys came down on the minibus. Oh, look out, boys.
So who's this gentleman from Larne then?
So this is Rhys. Rhys from Larne has been in the news because he trained himself to drop his accent after wanting to be taken seriously, but is now trying to get his Welshness back into his voice.
So I think you can appreciate that. It works well. It's good volume. It's quite sensitive. This being VHF, it needs an aerial. Normally it would be a telescopic aerial, but this has got the aerial is built in. It'd probably pick up more stations if it had an external telescopic aerial, very much like the VTR130. I'll switch over to medium wave. And go away from the music.
For a job done right.
Parents are in Manchester, or in Glasgow, Cardiff, Plymouth, Sunderland, Sussex, Stoke-on-Trent.
The election again. And long wave.
My eyes felt like they'd been strip-mauled. These were not artworks that asked questions, except perhaps, how much am I worth? And nor did they attempt to answer any. They were just assets, bearer bonds
BBC Radio 4 on long wave.
With the richest fool. This was the transubstantiation of art and greed into money
I think it's got a great sound to it.
Perhaps you think I'm exaggerating.
It looks great.
Perhaps you think I'm a curmudgeonly traditionalist with an axe to grind, or that I'm grumpy because I didn't like...
And these are quite cheap on eBay. They made one with like a cowhide skin on it, which looks a bit strange to me, but each to their own.
Replacing the flame retardant with paint and mechanically spraying it all over the canvas.
So we'll just finally have a look at all the radios lined up together before we close this video. So I think these radios are truly a design classic, and as we pan through them now, starting off with the 1965 original radio, as I said, quite rare, having the preset for Radio Luxembourg 208. Surprisingly for the 1960s, being beige, I would have thought they'd have put them out in more exciting colours. I think the design would have lent to having some bright, cheerful colours. And then we have the two radios, 1965, probably to 67, with Radio Caroline on, and that upset the BBC, so it was removed. And then when the 1967, when the BBC One, all the other channels came in, they started having the markings on the radio. This being the rare red one, I think it looks great in red. It pops out much better than the beige one. And then the black VTR130 with VHF, FM, which is really, in this day and age, the real usable vintage radio. But if you like the design and you don't want a vintage radio, why not buy one of these? It came out in 2002. And it was known as the 1966 radio, really, because of the World Cup, and I'm sure many people tuned into it. It is said that, well, it being a teenage radio, but apparently there are comments online that they use these in prisons, being a medium wave, long wave radio only, and without a telescopic aerial. Truly a design classic, as they're proud to boast on this box. What do you think? Have you got one of these radios? Has anybody out there got a green one? Anybody know any history they'd like to share? I'd very much appreciate your comments. Thank you for tuning in, and come back again to see some more videos on vintage radios. If you've not already seen them, I've done a little history on the Roberts revival, and I've also done a little look at the Hacker radios and Roberts, the premium radios that they used to make in the 70s. They're worth a watch. Well, thank you for watching, and until the next time, cheerio.